Greetings, one and all. We are in the White Mountains of Arizona, and it's channeling time. This is going to be an interesting one. The other day, I was just thinking to myself, using my ego, I guess, maybe partly my higher self, but I was thinking, man, if this is a dream reality, everything is infinite, there are no real rules, anything is possible, then why do we have math? Math is nothing but limitation. That's all it is limitation. This has to be this. Well, that defies everything I know about this cube matrix. Maybe within the cube matrix, math makes some sort of sense. But beyond that, math, I believe, is... I don't know. I'm just getting the idea that math is a system designed to keep us in limitation, to keep us within the confines of the cube, the box. So we definitely want to get some more info on mathematics today and see if that's true, if I'm just making stuff up here. Does 2 plus 2 really equal 4? I'm not so certain these days. As a kid, I hated math. I've always hated math. I still hate math. I just don't like it. And what I'm thinking now is that my higher self was rejecting it because it's not real. It's just another control system. Again, I don't know for sure. We're going to find out here today. Tara's never been good at math either, so I'm getting the feeling that our higher selves are intentionally keeping us away from falling for a control system. I don't know who Tara's going to channel. This is going to be an interesting one. I don't know if we're going to get a high polarity, a low polarity, or what. We do want to believe. Look at a cool shirt.
Okay.
All right, who you got today?
A white reptilian.
A white reptilian. 7D, if I recall.
He says he's in the 6th.
Okay,
dimension.
6D. So you don't have polarity as we understand it.
He says he leans more towards neutral.
All right, a neutral white reptilian from 6D. And why is he here to speak to us about mathematics?
It is the soul of the cube. And you are in the cube. So.
Okay, well, we appreciate you coming to speak with us and educating us on math. So I was telling the people that it's my intuition and my logic even that math is a matrix control program to keep us in limitation. Can you speak on that?
Yes. Everything has a value. You think of the number 1, there is value in 1. The number 2, value in 2. You can hold it. You can see it. Sometimes you can hear it. All of it is confined. It is no more, no less. 2 is 2. There is no layer. It is only what it is. And that is the ultimate theme of the cube. Within it is all there is. No more, no less. No expansion, no layers. It all makes sense.
Okay, so it appeals to the ego mind, the logic mind, which is what is keeping us enslaved in this cube.
Of course, it appeals to your ego mind or your logic mind. It is what it is made of. Just like when you connect to your soul and you understand it, yet it is hard to describe. It is hard to draw or to create music about. And that is because it is multi-layered, it is multifaceted. It expands beyond and continues expanding above and below and in all directions. But everything within the cube, all numbers, are confined. Limitation is what their ultimate meaning represents. the limitation of 1, the limitation of 2, so on and so forth.
So math permeates the cube. So if we go to a different planet, mathematics still makes sense. If we go to a different solar system or a different part of our cube universe, math will always make sense, but there's no math outside of the cube.
The way things are quantified or subtracted or multiplied are different outside of the cube because time doesn't exist. Within the cube, within a linear time frame, with time being a factor and space being a factor, then yes, all numbers make sense. They all have a value. But outside of the cube, their value differs depending on the perspective, depending on the dimension, depending on your own vibration. Even the number 6, as we say, sixth dimension, you see it as a linear number 6, as there must be a first dimension and a second dimension. You are in the third dimension, and perhaps there is a sequence, but the dimensions are not in sequence. Outside of this cube, everything is as it is at once. The 6th, the 5th, the 13th, no matter what it is, all together, happening at once, no linear fashion. So 6 doesn't mean what you think it is.
Okay, so there's mathematics outside of the cube, but it varies depending on the consciousness.
Exactly. If you were to, let's say, take a group of my people and have them move into another room, and you might say, I've moved 3 of my friends into the next room. How many friends do I have left in this room? Well, you can never take away energy, so technically those friends never left. So there was nothing to subtract, yet they also exist in the other room. Therefore, your numbers within the cube don't make much sense.
So since energy is infinite and permeates all things, there's never a static number that you can count.
Precisely.
So that would mean then understanding numbers might help us to master the cube. Would that be an accurate statement?
Yes, if you would like to master the cube and that is your intention, by all means do so. It is like sitting in school and your teacher hands you a book and you want to be the master of that book. You would read it through and through, try to understand every bit of literary information, trying to understand what chapter 1 means as it correlates to chapter 13, trying to understand the characters, trying to understand the author and the author's mindset as they looked into this book. You could become a master of this book, but it is still someone else's idea, someone else's words. So you've become a master, or perhaps just a student of someone else's mastery.
Okay. Is mastery of cube mathematics necessary for ascension, or can we just skip that altogether and go straight into the soul?
Perhaps it would be beneficial to try to understand how mathematics were created, why they were created, to see them from the eyes of the opposite polarity. But you do not need to be a quote unquote master in order to leave the cube. For why would you need to master the cube itself? You only need to master yourself, understand the self, the light and dark within the self, understanding that you are the cube, while understanding that you are not the cube. And then you leave the cube.
Hmm. I've heard many people report that during the ascension process, they start seeing the numbers of the cube, the programming behind everything. Uh, is this a step that's necessary, or only certain people experiencing this?
Everyone's ascension process differs. But for some, as they awaken and the wool is pulled back from your eyes, other things become visible, either within your what you might perceive as your third eye, or perhaps with your physical eyes, just like certain revelations, perhaps understanding your politics from a different perspective, one that was almost impossible, perhaps 30 years ago, but now seems quite obvious. It is the same, now perceiving numbers. The numbers were always there, but now you're beginning to look beyond the skin of the matrix. You're looking into its soul, just as you look into my soul so that you might communicate with me. You're merely looking at its makeup.
Okay, is an ability to manipulate the numbers necessary in order to manifest consciously?
There are many ways to manifest consciously, but that is one of the ways if you were to choose it. If you were to understand what the cube is made of, see its essence, trying to understand that essence, then perhaps you can use it to manipulate the cube while you work on your own ascension process, also understanding that is part of your ascension process. How could I understand this environment fully? Its shadow, its light, its negative polarity, its positive polarity, and perhaps its neutrality, and how that connects with you while you understand your own shadow and light. Where do the numbers reside within me? Where are the limitations within myself? Where have I become static, much like these static numbers, the static cube itself? And if you can understand the essence of the cube while your own natural essence, then you've seen both halves. You understand both halves. And that is the unlocking of the door. And all you need to do is walk through it.
Okay, I've always had an aversion to mathematics, and I don't see the numbers as part of my ascension. Is that my higher self keeping me away from that part of the matrix?
It could be part of it. It depends on your vibration, as there are some that you may consider a high vibration, expanded consciousness, yet they are also experts at mathematics. This does not mean that their higher self is either accepting or rejecting of that mathematics. It just means that that is their version of seeing the numbers. Some see the numbers outside of your schooled mathematics, and they want to understand, what does this number mean in the confines of the cube. Others have learned to see the numbers and its correlation through your equations, your actual studied mathematics. And so this is their way of understanding the light and shadow. But perhaps for your higher self, it wants to be more independent, and so it does not want to understand constriction and restriction. It doesn't want to be confined, so it has an aversion to these numbers. But you also understand that there are numbers within this cube, and it might help you to understand them. So although you may not like mathematics because your soul does not vibrate at the frequency of mathematics, you still understand its value. So perhaps you look at numbers in a different form.
Okay, can you give an alternative viewpoint on mathematics in the cube?
Yes, there are the mathematics that you are taught in school, that you plug in numbers into an equation. And if you're wanting to figure something out, you're wanting to figure out the square footage of a house, or you're wanting to build a house, perhaps you're wanting to measure your own foot. You would rely on the mathematics that school had taught you, because those things that you are attempting to create are within the cube matrix, and you would like only to use your ego and your logic to create those things, to measure those things. And so mathematics would be very helpful in that situation. However, let's say you wanted to build a house based on what your soul was feeding you and telling you. Your soul could build a house just as easily as an ego could build a house. But perhaps those houses might look different. One might look like an entire forest, or one might look like a box. It all depends on perspective. Each are using their own form of numbers and mathematics, but one was taught in school, and the one was taught in source.
So Tara and I have built our home based on source, our higher self.
You're working on it.
Working on it. What would you say to people who have invested heavily in mathematics and are having a difficulty accepting this information?
Understand that there is no right and no wrong. If you feel a pull towards trying to understand fully all the mathematics of this universe, meaning within the cube, then that is your mission, and there are lessons within that. And if that is something that your soul is pulling you towards, as there are many souls pulling them towards understanding completely the cube matrix, then by all means follow what your soul is asking you to do. But if you are doing it in an attempt to understand your soul, well, you'll find yourself continually searching for an equation that does not exist within this cube.
So 2 plus 2 always equals 4 within the cube.
Yes.
But 2 plus 2 never equals 4 outside of the cube.
Yes. It depends on your perspective. 2 of what? If everything is infinite and everything is 1, how could you single out 2, let alone a second 2, to create something else? Yes, energy can create energy, but it is amorphous. It is not confined, and it is not a number.
Could we say that outside the cube there is only one source?
Yes, you could say this if you understand that it is not a finite one. It is a continually expanding one, infinitely upwards, infinitely downwards, and in all directions.
So it's one, and it's infinity, and it's everything in between.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. That's a lot to think about. I think that's all my questions for you. Of course, I'm going to have follow-up questions after this video is over. But I do thank you for visiting with us and sharing your knowledge and wisdom. We do appreciate it. I love you. Do you have any last message for the people before we head out?
Yes. Many of you are going to ask about repeating numbers. Perhaps let's use the number 7. Perhaps you see the repeating number 777. There are many layers of message within it for that person. So I don't want to, again, restrict the information, just like mathematics within the cube likes to restrict. But there is a layer that is trying to show you that 7 isn't always 7. It is multiplied and multiplied. 7, 7, 7. Expansion in all directions, that you are not confined. That 7 means nothing outside of the cube. That it is continually expanding. 7 of what? How could you ever confine energy? So try to utilize this information while tapping into the message that your own soul is trying to show you with these repeating numbers. They repeat because there is no singular 1 or 3 or 7.
All right. Forgot to ask about the Fibonacci sequence. Wanted to know what that is all about, but maybe perhaps a different day. How are you feeling?
Yeah. Pretty good actually. That guy had a pretty nice energy.
We like the white reptiles, don't we?
No, yeah, that one was cool.
We have channeled them before. We'll put a card in the description somewhere.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, definitely check that out. He had such a like an open like demeanor, and it seemed like it was so clear in my mind. Now it doesn't seem so clear anymore, but it seems so clear while he was in there, like the difference between like math here and math outside the cube. It was like there is math, but you have to have like a consciousness that also understands that like 7 is infinite, 3 is infinite, 1 is infinite. So if you're like adding infinities together, like it's totally different. I don't know, it was weird.
We're not quite ready to understand that while we're still in the cube, probably.
Yeah,
so we're reaching a bit here, but it's good to understand the true nature of things.
Yeah, and it's good to strive to try to understand something. Like we're not trying to just understand things we already understand. Like
Right. And if you don't know what we're talking about when we say the cube, be sure to check out our Black Cube channel. We'll put a link for that too, a card.
Definitely.
Yeah.
What did your higher selves have to say about that? I'm really curious too, because like my higher self was like, oh yes, of course, like infinity in all directions, like and that's why like I think I had an aversion to math. It made sense, but it also didn't make sense to me, and it just seemed, I don't know, like I was putting myself in a box. Every time I did math, I felt like my head was in a cube. Like I was just like, and my thoughts are like bouncing around in this cube, and I'm like,
It's such limitation, which is the opposite of source. So that's why they hammer it into us in school. It's just to teach us limitation, to teach us to think shallow thinking, I think.
And I think there's also this push to like, if you didn't do well in mathematics, you're somehow of a lower intelligence.
Right, half the SAT is math.
Yeah, like a higher intelligence is well at math. It does well at math, but it's just keeping us focused on our egos instead of our souls. Like, where is the SAT on your soul consciousness? Like, it's not there.
There's no art in the SAT.
Yeah, there's no music in SAT. There's no art. Where's all of that? Where's the creativity?
Right.
So, anyway, that was interesting. We're gonna have to watch this back several times.
We always do. We watch these 3 or 4 times, don't we?
Yeah, so what did you guys think? What questions arose for you that we didn't ask during this particular channeling? Like, start a discussion.
Yeah, I don't even know enough about math to ask all the right questions. So we might do a part 2 if you guys have some good questions.
Yeah, I mean, I know the names of some equations, can't really do them, but I know them.
Yeah, the quadratic equation is so important for our lives. We had to know that.
Parabolas and vortices and
all right, well, we gotta go.
All right, well, it was fun. We'll catch you guys next time. Don't forget that if you would like a one-on-one channeling, check out my website, where you basically get to take James's position and you get to connect with any entity just like we do here. So if you have personal questions, you can definitely do that. And otherwise, we will see you guys next Monday.
Thanks for watching.
All right, bye.
Bye.